Welcome to Grit, Real Stories of Recovery. My name is Paul, and I'll be your host. Please note that this podcast is uncensored and may contain material that is not suitable for all audiences. I'm privileged today to be here with John Bauer. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. I really appreciate your willingness to share your story. Hopefully this can help someone somewhere down the road. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What was your family upbringing like? What was your early life like?
Well, when we were growing up, both my mom and my dad were alcoholics. So
Did you grow up here in Denver?
Yes, I did, yes. And, in our upbringing, it wasn't, the best upbringing, but, we still weren't taught certain things in life. But then you kind of later on down in the road, you kind of learn as you go kind of thing.
So were they functioning alcoholics? Was there abuse? Or were they just two people that were alcoholics doing the best they could?
They were somewhat kind of functional. My dad, he drove truck. So then he would stay after, everybody comes and pulls in. They always have a couple of beers at work.
Right.
And, and then one night he had too many and he was swerving and he got a DUI, which they took his job away because they weren't going to insure somebody that was an alcoholic.
Right.
And then my mom, she was an alcoholic as well. And, she was functional, but then the arguments and then the fights and stuff like that, to where she was accusing him of making her an alcoholic.
Huh. So it was a very codependent, even though it was dysfunctional, relationship between the two of us.
Yes.
How many siblings did you have?
I have two younger brothers.
Okay. And so did you find yourselves bonding together to support each other because of the way mom and dad were?
That one is kind of a hard question because I'm a dad's boy. I'm a daddy boy. And my brothers are mama boys. So whenever the fight would start out, it seemed like it was against 3 against 2,
So you guys were taking sides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that caused a little conflict between the three of you?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
That makes sense.
Yes.
What was school like?
Oh, school, going through the grades and stuff like that, I was kind of the class clown, if you may say. So I wasn't really there to freaking learn. I was there just to freaking just horse around and, and stuff like that. Well, it started coming to the point to where they're like, well, we're going to have to put you in like a different class, to where you can function more, or get the more of the attention that you need. Mm-hmm. And then the fighting, I was fighting pretty much every day, with somebody new. So, and that got me, suspended and, and I haven't got expelled. I always got suspended, 3-day suspension. So
you were like me, you were acting out in school. And
yes.
At what point did you start using either drugs or alcohol?
Around 16,
okay.
17. And we went and bought alcohol. We bought that Mad Dog 2020. And the way I was, sipping it. And then once you get a couple of sips down, then, you're like, hey, I could keep going, and then I really got sick, puking and all this kind of stuff. So it was, and my mom was like, well, at least, you learned that lesson, I guess, but they weren't really too bad,
So they weren't mad at all?
No, because they thought already that it's going to happen, one way or another, might as well, notice it, instead of keeping it on the down low and
right.
And having to be a big surprise.
Sure. Did you find it to be like a bonding experience with your peers?
It could be, yes. We were talking, and having fun. And then once you started, getting to the point of, getting nausea, then it was like, oh, geez. And then you're hugging the porcelain god. You're like, I'm never going to do this, Lord, never again. And what happens? A couple of days later, you're back at it again.
So what was that like when a few days later, what thought popped into your mind that, oh, maybe we should try that again?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really anything, that I should quit. I was just, when you're with your friends, you're just hanging out and drinking and drinking and drinking. But then when I started getting, a little older, that's when you start saying, why are you doing this? This is not what you need to be doing.
So you drank all the way through high school, the rest of high school. Did you graduate high school?
I did graduate from Thornton High School.
Okay. And then what did you do with yourself after that?
Well, I just started just working, and then it
What industry were you working in?
I was cooking for Denny's.
Okay.
And and then the pattern that I have developed was work during the day, go to a friend's house, party all night, come in the morning, hungover and hating life. And then a friend of mine, he had some little White Cross kind of, some caffeine pills or whatever they were.
So White Cross amphetamines.
Yes.
Yep, speed.
Yep. And we took about 10 each. And then in about 15 minutes, we were flying. And everybody's like, what the hell? You guys come in here dragging your feet, and now you're all freaking running around like, you're trying to get somewhere. So, yeah, it was an experience.
So was that your first exposure to drugs?
Yes. And then when I got introduced with methamphetamine, it just kind of took me to another level.
So tell me about that, right? Because you obviously enjoyed amphetamines when you first tried them at Denny's. So how long did the cycle go in which you were just drinking and taking pills before you found meth and started using that?
It was for, I don't know, I can't remember on length of time, but it was pretty much, at a weekend thing. We would drink, and then during the weekday, we would drink, but then most of the time we started going home early, so then we can go to bed for a little bit, and then go to work.
So you were somewhat responsible and functional at that point.
A little bit.
Okay. And so when did meth come into the picture? How old were you?
Oh, geez. How old was I? 27, maybe 30. I was partying with a couple of friends of mine, and we were just sitting there drinking, having fun. And then the other brother came in, and he had methamphetamine. And then everybody was circling around him so they can get their hit. And I was just kind of curious. I was just like, well, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. And when I took it, the heart started racing, and I felt different. And I was just like, well, maybe this is something that I can do and control. And
right, we always think we can control it. Right?
Yes, sir. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, and you'd been able to control your drinking and the taking of pills for a period of time, right, while you were working, and you were somewhat responsible with that. So, of course, our natural inclination is, I can control whatever, right?
And, and there was, the saying of every drug addict is do the drug and don't let the drug do you.
Right.
And most of the time you get that imprinted in your head. Oh, I'm in control. No, I was never in control.
So then what did that look like? After you tried it that time, what happened?
It took me, because I liked the heart racing and the way I felt, and just kept going back over there and keep using it.
So were you buying it yourself or just smoking what other people had?
We had the money, and then we would all ship in on it.
Right.
And then then another time where they introduced me to their dealer, and then after that it was just rock and roll. I was like, I don't have to go through nobody no more. I can just go straight to the source and, have a good time.
So how long was it social in which you were all chipping in before you started going to the dealer by yourself?
We would be just partying maybe once or twice a week, and then we would all still be doing it. Then buying it, I just normally always had it. Just go over there and sit there and get high and have fun with my friends. But then there was one time where I was living in their house at one time, and I get off work. This is when I was working for Sam's Club. And
so were you living with your family while you were working at Denny's? Did you move out and get your own place?
yeah, I did. I moved out I got my own place.
So how did you end up living at their house?
Well, just kind of, partying, you get an apartment, you get everything, and then you lose it. And then you get, you're living with your aunt and uncle so you can get back on your feet.
So you started having consequences
Yes.
early on.
Or very early on.
Okay.
I would build it up, and then easily just crash it down. It was just that much of a pattern to where it was happening so often and continuous to where I thought it was normal. Yeah. His brother Danny was working at the same place we were working at Sam's Club. And he found a guy who was selling it inside, working in Sam's Club. So we both come home and we would always have it, so just trying to keep it away from the parents because their dad was a preacher.
Okay, so you were living with the parents of these guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the parents, they kind of knew already that there was something, going on. And this was way before I moved in. But they knew the pattern, we're up all night, partying, talking. Things just started getting a little weird,
But it was still fun then. It was still
Yeah.
social.
It was still social.
Right? You were starting to have consequences, but as you said, those just seemed normal because your life wasn't miserable yet.
Yes.
But you felt good, you felt connected, you felt like you were having fun, and you just felt like this was a normal life. So you had mentioned earlier, it got weird, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I asked you about it being social. What it sounds like is you're going to start explaining when it stopped being social. What was that like?
You just wanted to be by yourself and enjoy a high, doing whatever. I started getting into, scrapping, aluminum, copper, and stuff like that. And I, pretty much party all day. And then at night is where, I started getting into places where I shouldn't have been. And
So you were breaking into places to steal metals to then sell them to make money.
it was helping me just kind of stay afloat a little bit, just to kind of maintain a high and not get super high.
Had you lost your job at Sam's Club?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I lost that. Just started, venturing out, meeting people that you shouldn't be meeting,
And what do you mean by that?
They're called drug circles, little circle here, circle there. Well, I branched out to where I had circle here, circle here, circle here, circle here, circle here. I was meeting people in other circles. We're like, oh, hey. I was like, oh, great, here we go. And just meeting, the dealers and stuff like that. And it just started bringing me more into the realm of being a full-time drug
To the
addict.
whole culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's a totally different world. It's crazy. Then being in it for so long, you're just thinking, I was like, well, how in the heck am I going to get out of this?
So when was the first time you thought that? At some point you realized you had a problem. What were you thinking at that time? Like, what were some of the cues that made you say, I shouldn't be doing this?
It was in between, hey, I like this, and oh, damn, I hate this. You love it when it's right here in front of you, but then when it sucks is when you got to go and look for it.
Mm-hmm.
One time I was just driving home, and I was falling out, and
Explain falling out to the folks that are listening.
well, it's when you become really high, you're totally alert when the drugs start to wear off, and you're starting to become normal, kind of, to where everything is leaning on you, and you feel like you just can't, your brain can't move, can't function anymore. It's been running 200 miles an hour for 5-6 days.
So basically you're exhausted.
Yes.
And starting to fall asleep and starting to lose focus.
And I started, because it was raining, and I thought there was, reflections from a sign onto the street. It looked like there was a person in the street. What the hell? And as you're trying to, stay awake, and then you're
So
like,
you were having hallucinations.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, all right, we're going to bed. And you sleep, for a couple of days, and then as you wake up, you're getting the itch. You're already, it's when it becomes that quick for an itch, you definitely know you have a problem. And then there's certain friends of mine, that were kind of pissed, I'm freaking starting to do this drug, and they tried it early on in their life, so they know what the effects are. And when I started doing it, I started creeping away from them.
Start isolating.
Yes. Started distancing myself from them, to where if they don't see me, then they can't judge me.
Right.
So that's the way I was thinking. Stayed away from family, friends, and then just stayed by myself.
So where were you living at this time? Were you still with the brothers?
No, it ended up where I was on the street for a little bit. Then
Just living in your car?
living in my truck.
Okay.
Meeting girls on, the dating platforms, and they also were meth addicts. So I was thinking at one time, I was like, well, what would it be like if you had a partner that did the same thing? How would that turn out? It didn't turn out too well.
No, I can imagine it didn't.
Yeah.
So you had started having these consequences, right? You were losing your job, isolating yourself from your family. You were homeless. Did you have any run-ins with the law?
I did. And every time I got in a run-in with the law, I got arrested. I got thrown in jail.
And what did you get arrested for?
Drug possession and paraphernalia.
Yeah.
And that's a class 5 felony. And I got one in 2011. And then that was kind of the reality check for me when I was doing my job search. And then I started noticing on applications, are you a convicted felon?
Right.
And I say yes, and then they want to know the date and the day and what was the charge. And then when it came to interview, they run my background, and they're like, well, sorry, you got a felony. We can't hire you unless it has some years behind it.
Right.
My job opportunities were crap, working for day laborers, just barely making it.
And how did you feel about yourself at this time?
Oh, pretty crappy. I felt like shit because I wasn't going anywhere with anything. I was, working my ass off for a couple bucks an hour,
Right.
and then you try to figure out once you get the money, it's like, okay, now what am I going to do with this? If I go this way, that means I'm going to be out on the street and nothing is going to be, I'm going to be high, I'm going to be on the street. Or I could take the money and get a motel room and try to finagle something, to either where I can get high, or just sleep. So.
And what did you usually do?
Normally I went and got high,
Yeah.
and then when I started feeling more shitty, to where I was like, all right, we're just gonna get a motel room. We can sleep, and and start the new day tomorrow. But then when you sleep and you've been up for so long, to where the body starts craving it, and there's nothing that you can do, and your head starts pounding, no energy at all, just total crap.
Yeah. How many times did you try to stop?
Oh,
Or was there a point where you told yourself, I have to stop?
well, I keep telling myself I have to stop, but I keep going.
Right. So how many times do you think you did that? That you said, today I'm not going to use, and then you use, and then,
Over 100 times.
okay.
Yeah. And then I met up with a friend of mine. He was actually another guy who I was getting meth from. And he and I became really good friends when I got behind on my apartment.
So wait, you had gotten an apartment?
Yeah, I got a studio apartment at one time.
How did you get that without a job?
I got lucky. I was working for a temp service and started working for a construction company. And it's demolition. So I was like, all right, so we're in there doing construction cleanup and start working and stuff like that. And then the supervisor noticed how hard of a worker you are. And he goes, hey, why don't you go down at the office and fill out an application? And so then I went down there, did the application, blah, 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 and I got hired on. So I started, working for them, taking the bus, and stuff like that. But then I was trying to do the meth use just on the weekends.
Was that working?
For a little bit until, the weekends never stop.
Right.
You get so much of an amount where, you just keep going. Well, I can go to work. I'll just puff a little bit in the morning. And then you make it through the morning and you keep doing that same process, and you're tired, you're exhausted, and you're getting beat up at work and stuff like that. And then it just come crashing down. I was actually working for them and lost my job because the supervisor knew that I was high, and he just made my world a lot harder.
And so did he end up firing you?
Yeah,
Okay.
They let me go.
Okay. So you've got this apartment.
Yep, and then I was losing that, and then moved in with them, and I stayed with them for a little bit.
With who?
His name was Noel, and he.
These are people you were working with? Or?
This is Noel. Noel and I. He was the guy who I was getting it from, and then we become real good friends.
Okay.
And then I was just, staying with them for a little bit, and then one day he was like, "Man, you know what? I think you better go to STEP. STEP would be a good place for you." And I was like, "Well, what is STEP?" He goes, "It's a transitional housing for men with drug and alcohol problems." I was like, well, telling myself, well, I don't think I need that.
So someone else suggested that you get into an addiction recovery program.
Yeah. He introduced me to it, and by that time I just kept.
How did he know about it?
He went to STEP.
But he was using meth.
Yes. Well, he went to STEP, and then kind of relapsed and just stayed away from it. But he introduced me to STEP.
So he didn't do the things that were suggested.
No.
Okay.
No. Well, and he told me about this. So then there was like, all right, I'll call him, and called here, did the over the phone interview and stuff like that, and then they let me in. So I've been in here trying this with STEP for maybe 4 or 5 times.
So you came back and went out and came back and went out 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. And then I noticed this time around that with STEP.
And how long ago was that when you say this time around?
When I came back in 2018, I noticed a big change in STEP. They got it all redone, floors, and everything's looking presentable. And then I found out that now they got more of a structure base to it.
Program.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. You get an RSM, and I was just like, and then you talk and tell your problems, and then they tell you, all right, you know what? Let's do this in parts. Let's work on your mental health, get you up and going with the resume and, cover letter, with the Job Resource Center. And I was like, oh, you guys got a Job Resource Center? Like, wow. It just blew me away. This, from 2018 until now, it's been just an awesome road of recovery.
So, and while it's great that STEP offered you these resources, it was ultimately you that made the decision to do things differently that time, right? And what was that like? What were some of the reasons why you said, I have to change my life, and this time I'm going to do the things that are suggested?
When I came in, you're beat up. The world come crashing down on you.
How did you feel at that time?
I felt like a piece of shit. And I was, and you start getting it in your head that you're a piece of shit, and the other side's going, well, let's do something, and then when I came here, my mind and everything just kind of just lifted up a little bit, knowing that something good is going to happen here.
So you had hope for the first time.
Yes. Oh yeah. Because like I said, I've been in here, 4 or 5 times, and most of the time you just come here to rest.
Yeah, that's the way this program was up until, you came back. So you did these things, right, to rebuild your life. What were those things?
Get a job that'll get me enough to pay my fees and give me the time. And I was told from my RSM that you need to go to meetings. You need to find a sponsor. You need to have him run you through the steps. Just keeping each other sober, because he needs me and I need him.
And so you did that.
Yes.
Do you still do that?
The meetings, I try to do as much as I can right now, because work has just got me really busy right now, which is a good thing because I'm not sitting and idling. Once I, keep going, and if I ever needed a meeting, like right away, if I'm at work, I can get one on Zoom. I could do one on Zoom, so I can get refreshed on that. So
Good.
Yes.
Good. So you got a job. What were some of the other things you did?
I got into the STEP Denver Sober Homes.
Okay.
Was doing really good there, and then COVID hit. Then after COVID passed, a friend of mine, while during COVID, he got me a job as a security guard. And I've been doing security, and I'm still doing security right now. So
you're still working at this company. How long has it been?
I was working with one company for 2.5 years, and then I moved over to Spear Security, to where I am still there now. Good opportunity. The hourly pay is awesome. Everybody in the office knows that I'm in recovery, and they support me 100%.
So you've been honest and open about your situation.
Yes.
How do people look at that? How do people respond to that?
They're like, hey, yeah, keep it up. Not one Have I had anything derogatory towards me? The things that I've noticed is with this job, I'm meeting people that are in recovery.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, I've been meeting everybody that's in recovery, and they are like, "Yeah, I don't really talk about it that much." I was like, "Well, I just let everybody know, so it keeps me in check." You know.
It's amazing how many other people, when we say I'm in recovery from the disease of addiction, will say, "Oh, me too."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You find people everywhere.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So you have been employed. You've rebuilt your life. Do you have your own place now?
No, I am living with. I'm going to sober living Oxford.
Okay. So you moved from the Step Sober Living into Oxford Sober Living. Why did you do that? Did you think you needed some more runway, some stability?
Well, when you leave Step Denver facility and go to a step home, the longest you can stay there is 18 months. So, and then COVID hit, so that made my stay even longer. And then they opened up another house that's right off of Tennyson, and I was asked to open one side of the house, and I ran that house until I left.
How'd that make you feel that the organization trusted you enough to say, "Hey, will you go open this house for us?"
It was awesome. I was like, right on. You know, finally there's someone out there that can trust me.
Trust.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Would you say that might have been the first time you really felt trusted since you started using?
Yes. Yes. It felt really good, and it made me feel more alive. You know, that there's actually meaning now behind it.
That's great. So, what is your life like now? Right? Have you rebuilt your relationships with your family, your healthy friends? Have you made new friends? What does that look like?
Right now, I'm staying away from the friends that I went and drank with and grew up with. For me to make it, I have to stay away, and I can't even go over there anymore. You know, because then everybody's drinking, and here you're drinking water, and freaking, there's no fun in that.
No.
It just kind of makes you have the itch, and or the fuck it. Let's do it,
Exactly.
And
that's the disease talking to you, right? Telling you that you could control it again.
yeah, so I stay away from everybody that's using, and I focus on myself with surrounding myself with sober people that are in recovery. So then I keep myself in check, and then I'll have friends of mine put me in check when I need to be.
And do you help them stay in check? Do you
Yes.
find that the peer recovery community helps you and you help them to have a better life?
Yeah, because the way I do it is I tell them straight out how it is. I don't beat behind a bush or anything, and they might not like it, or they might thank me for it. It just depends on the situation and how much animosity is in the air and stuff like that. So,
But do they ultimately respect it when you help them out?
they do, yes.
And do you feel the same way when somebody keeps you in check?
Yes. I look forward to it, because if you're just going around, blah, 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 just, thinking, everything's all good. And then once you start thinking so good, then this brain over here is telling you, hey, we can do this.
Right.
So if you hang around with nothing but sober people, we talk about sober things, and then maybe we might rehearse on, a little story back then, that you can share and just say, yeah, this is when I was stupid.
So you remind yourself what it was like so that you keep it fresh in your mind and know, hey, I can't and shouldn't do that again.
Yes, very much so. I also keep myself in check by noticing my surroundings, people on the street. I've been there. I've done that.
You have a higher sense of awareness.
Yes. And so I keep it floating around in the brain. We're not in control. We'll never be in control. We can only just fight it off. Then you become a better fighter. You know, what are you fighting for? I'm fighting for my life.
That's well put. That's exactly right. We can never control it. We're never cured. We're never fixed. And we can just day by day fight against the disease. That's well said, John. So how do you feel now about John? Compared to the way you felt back then, you described being miserable and you felt like a piece of shit and you were exhausted and you felt hopeless. You were dishonest. And like, what is different now?
Now I'm fully alive. I'm here, you know, sober. I'm enjoying just life.
That's great. So if someone out there right now is listening and maybe they can't stop using, what would you say to someone to make them understand that they need to make a change in their life?
I come out right straightforward, you know, and tell them, hey, I've been drug-free, alcohol-free for over 5 years. I've been in your shoes, so it can be done. If I can do it, then everybody else can do it.
So you give them kind of a message of hope.
Yes.
Right? That you don't have to live this way anymore.
Right.
And so, you know, regardless of what program a person went to, there is a chance that they could stop using and rebuild their life and get this life that you described and feel differently than they feel right now. Mm-hmm. Does that sort of sum that up?
Yes. I was talking to one gentleman. He was living on the streets and he always came into the store. And I told him, I was like, hey, you know, if you need some help, there's help out there. If you want, I can give you resources so then you can, you know, follow up on the resources.
Good.
But then mostly I get the reply back, I don't have a problem.
Right.
I'm not an alcoholic. And then you see them the next day and they're stumbling, their backpack weighs 1,000 pounds and they're going backwards and all this kind of stuff. I was like, you need help.
And that's the nature of this disease.
Yes.
This is the only disease in which the number one symptom of the disease is that it tells you you don't have a disease.
Right.
And that you're okay.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
John, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and being transparent enough to share your story with us and the listeners. You are an amazing guy that has done everything that was suggested to you, and the turnaround in your life is nothing short of amazing, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This podcast is being brought to you by Step Denver Men's Residential Addiction Recovery Program. Step Denver gives men with nowhere else to turn the opportunity to overcome the consequences of addiction through a program based on sobriety, work, accountability, and community. For more information, visit stepdenver.org.